Defense Updates has reached more than 150,000 subscribers. We're genuinely thankful to our viewers. You keep us going. We don't dilute your video watching experience in this channel with sponsored products. If you like what we're doing, kindly support us on Patreon. www.patreon.com/defenseupdates. "2017 has been an extraordinary year for North Korea. It finally achieved a regime dream going back decades, establishing direct nuclear deterrence with the United States. Despite months of tough rhetoric and war threats from US President Donald Trump, the North pushed on and became the first rogue state to acquire a functional nuclear intercontinental ballistic missile as well as a powerful nuke. Negotiating with North Korea will become that much harder from now on. In this video, Defense Updates analyzes 5 important aspects the world has learned from North Korea in 2017.
Number 5.
Probably the most important lesson we learned this year is that North Korea is going to have these weapons no matter what the rest of the world says or does, and is prepared to carry heavy costs for them. Since the collapse of the six-party talks, North Korea has been increasingly sanctioned and isolated. Former South Korean President Park Geun Hye, now impeached, sought to worsen that isolation by trimming away at the North's diplomatic relationships, especially in the global South. China too has slowly stepped up sanctions and broadly concurs with the Americans on a denuclearized North. Despite all this, the North persisted. In the face of global rejection, it nonetheless tests bombs and missiles recently under the leadership of this newest Kim Jong Un. That the North clawed its way into these weapons despite decades of hassle, global isolation, and sprawling multilateral efforts to prevent it should serve as a warning. Any rogue state with sufficient resources and ruthlessness can now likely acquire these weapons. If the North can do it against all odds, then many other troublesome states might be considering this too.
Number 4.
Trump's harsh language on North Korea was arguably an experiment. No US president has ever talked to the North this way. Perhaps it would intimidate the North Koreans. Trump talked as the North does. Pyongyang has threatened for years, for example, to turn Seoul into a sea of fire. Trump turned such incendiary rhetoric back on the North, threatening to send an armada to totally destroy North Korea and use fire and fury to do so. Unsurprisingly, though, the hard talk did not work. The North predictably refused to bend, rather matching Trump insult for insult. In the end, even Trump seemed to realize that his large threats were leading nowhere, given how risky these strike options are. After the most recent missile test on November 29th, Trump restrained himself, saying only, "We'll take care of it."
Number 3.
As North Korea nuclearizes outside of the NPT-IAEA framework, questions about safety are growing. We have little technical information about the state of northern reactors, their safety protocols, waste disposal practices, maintenance, and so on. A tunnel at North Korea's primary testing facility collapsed this fall, and the North Koreans said nothing. A Japanese newspaper broke the story several months later, and South Korean scientists are now predicting that continued testing at Punggye-ri nuclear test site may actually bring down the mountain and release radioactivity in the manner of Chernobyl. When talks do eventually resume, this will provide a curious form of leverage to the North. Its nuclear program is now well established and growing. Kim has spoken of making North Korea the world's strongest nuclear power. Outsiders will be increasingly desperate to get into the North to inspect its facilities, at minimum to ensure it's not proliferating or on the cusp of a meltdown. This problem will worsen significantly in the coming years. Hence, some kind of negotiations with the North are almost inevitable now. North Korea with nuclear weapon and no outside supervision at all, no participation in the Non-Proliferation Treaty, NPT, or International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, is so frightening that pressure for the United States to talk to Pyongyang will grow dramatically. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson's recent freelancing on negotiations suggests this.
Number 2.
US officials had said after the launch of Hwasong-14 that the intercontinental ballistic missile test-fired by North Korea was something they had never seen before. As the West scrambled to assess the threat posed by the missile, Pentagon officials said the two-stage device fired by Pyongyang was considered brand new. This underlines the fact that US has very little intelligence. Back in the 1990s, American officials lamented that Pyongyang was the hardest of hard intelligence targets. This hasn't changed. There's no US embassy in North Korea and no American business community, so the CIA has very few assets to work in the first place. Even the South Koreans have trouble running agents and gathering human intelligence. National Security Agency of US also has not much to intercept. That's because most of the country is not connected to the internet and few people have cell phones.
Number 1.
In North Korea, 40% of the population, about 24 million people, live below the poverty line. Most workers earn $2 to $3 per month. The standard of living has deteriorated to extreme levels of deprivation, while the average life expectancy has fallen by 5 years since the 1980s. With the prevalent poverty in North Korea, food shortages are widespread. The food crisis has resulted in thousands of deaths. According to the World Food Program, 1/3 of children are stunted due to malnutrition, and the infant mortality rate is 33%. Due to the government's 2 meals a day campaign, food riots are a common occurrence. Although the country declares that healthcare is free, residents are denied medical treatment unless they can pay the high prices for medicine. The situation can result in widespread agitations and can make Kim vulnerable. Nukes, missile test, and rhetoric against America is a way to fan the nationalistic fervor and present Kim as a strong leader standing against the US. The resources devoted to the weapons are rumored to represent perhaps as much as 5% of the GDP. For a state as small and poor as North Korea, they are an enormous sacrifice. Hence, Northern leader Kim Jong Un will almost certainly not trade them away, or the concessions he will demand will be tremendous. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more videos like this. Hit the like button if you find the video interesting, and kindly provide your feedback in the comment section. This will help us improve.